Hello, I'm Janna, and welcome back to the Crafty Corner. Today is part 2 of our Grimoire project. We're going to be altering the interior of the Grimoire and putting together our first 2 panels. So, if you'd like to see which supplies we're going to be using, go ahead and pause here. All right, let's head over to the Crafty Corner. Today, we're going to be continuing altering our Grimoire book. Today, we're going to be focusing on the inside pages and altering them with some of the brand new Tim Holtz Ideology Collage papers. And take a look at these designs. There are so many good ones. This is going to be so much fun altering the book. So we're going to dive right in and start altering our pages. To start the alterations, we're just going to open this up, and I want to start with just getting some color onto the pages. And for that, we're going to be using some Distress Spray Stain. We've got some Vintage Photo, and we have our Distress Sprayer. So we're just going to spray and add some color. There we go. Now I'm just going to use the water to move some of that color around. We want this to flow. We want some water spots. Okay, so we'll be back in just a moment after I've had a chance to dry this off. Now that our pages are all nice and dry, it's time to add in a bit of collage. To do this, I'm pulling in this year's Tim Holtz collage sheets. These are absolutely fantastic. You might remember some of the older rolls where we had many of these designs on big rolls, but now we have them in super convenient sheet size. So I'm definitely looking for a vintage vibe, and I'm also looking for anything that looks really old, handwritten. That's going to help bring this grimoire to life. Ooh, absolutely can't pass up the bones. Those are fantastic. Probably staying away from the bugs and some of the other big images, but anything that's giving us vintage and handwriting is going to be perfect for the feel that I'm going for. Okay, we've got some good ones. Let's go ahead and set the rest of these aside. So the next thing that we're going to be doing is pulling in some collage medium. And this is my glue of preference for adding things to journals. So we're going to be going with this handwritten page first. And we're going to just open up the collage medium, and I'm going to be smooshing that all over the page. I'm going to take a good scoop of the collage medium on my fingers, and I'm going to be putting that directly onto the paper. Now, if you don't like working directly with your fingers, then you could definitely use a sponge, applicator, or a paintbrush. I just find that working my fingers is a little bit faster, and it also helps me feel that I've got a good smooth coat of glue all over my page instead of having little clusters that haven't quite smoothed out. So just finishing that up. Then we're going to take our sheet of collage paper. We're going to carefully line that up, and we're going to smooth that down right onto our page. Now, the really cool thing about the collage paper is that once it has been glued to the page, it is going to become see-through. That writing is going to look like we stamped it directly onto the page, but all we did was add a piece of collage paper over the top. And to make this even more transparent than it is right now, I'm going to give this a small spritz with my Distress Sprayer. And then I'm going to add another layer of glue over the top. And as you can see, the page has just turned transparent, and we can see all of that fun inking that we did before underneath. This is why I absolutely love using collage papers. I loved getting that layered look, and it's so fun because I didn't have to try to stamp in a small surface area, and I definitely could have gotten my stamps all the way to the interior of the book without some distortion. So collage paper works really, really well for this. Now I'm just taking my finger and I'm just smoothing down any of the wrinkles that are in the collage paper, and then we'll need to let this dry. Here is our dried page, and look at that. You can barely see where the collage paper is now. It seriously looks like we just stamped on this page. It looks so old and so grungy. I love it. Now let's move on and do a few more pages together. Now that we've collaged all of our pages, it's time to start adding in some art for the grimoire. But the question is, where to start? Well, of course, why don't we just start at the beginning? So, at the beginning, I'm going to be doing 2 panels, and the 2 panels that I want to do are going to be representative of the 4 elements and seasonal changes. So I'm kind of thinking I'm just going to draw the 4 elements. I'm just kind of freehanding this right now. So I'm starting with fire, just doing a little bit of a spiky flame for this. I'm really not sure where I'm going with this. This is just kind of the opening. I'm just getting my hand used to drawing again. It's kind of been a while. So down here I'm drawing a water droplet for water. That's pretty straightforward. I think the magic is really going to come when we start adding color. Over here, I'm going to be drawing a little curlicue. This is going to be representing wind. And up here, we're going to draw some leafy grass, and that's going to be representative of earth. These are pretty basic, but again, I really think the magic is going to be when we start adding the color. Now, for the colors, I'm going to be pulling in a mixture of distress oxides and distress mica spray stains. And of course, we're going to be painting with the Tim Holtz Ranger Fine Detailer water brush. For the colors today, we're going to be using some flickering candle, squeezed lemonade, and we'll also be pulling in a few others, but I have to remember to give these a really good shake before I start putting them down onto the mat off to the side, which acts as a palette for me. So there's our squeezed lemonade oxide. Now I've got some tumbled glass. This is another oxide. It's a lovely blue. I have to give that a really good shake as well. Then put my drop of ink down onto the mat. Okay, there we go. So let's go ahead. I'm going to pick up that brush, and I guess we're just going to dive right in and start with the flame. So I'm just kind of brushing on the distress oxide, and as you can see, that's really vibrant and it's very opaque, which is perfect since we've already got a fairly colorful background. And I really like how the oxides are going to pop over the distress spray stains that we put down earlier. So just going in with the brush and adding in that beautiful yellow to get our flame. There we go. Now, let's see. I'm going to take some jack-o'-lantern and I'm going to go on the side of that flame and add some accents. And I've also got the flickering candle, which I'll be adding as an accent as well. Now, the neat thing about the Distress Mica spray stains is that they can be painted on, and when you do paint them onto a surface, you're going to get this really cool kind of illuminated look. When I'm picking up the book later on, I'm hoping that you're going to be able to see how there's a bit of flash going on and that we can really see the mica bouncing around with the light, which is really cool. And I'm trying to go for that old kind of gothic, maybe Gregorian type illumination like the old monks used to do in the abbeys of Great Britain. So trying to go for that kind of vibe, but kind of crossing it with a modern bestiary look like in Dungeons and Dragons. Alright, so we're adding in some more oxide. It's going to give us a good solid foundation to work on. Good. And that brushes on really smoothly. And as it dries, you're going to see some of the oxide starting to take place, because as soon as the water touches the oxide ink, of course, it is going to immediately start oxidizing, and that's when we kind of get that creamy, dreamy, oxidey look. Now I'm going to add a few more colors, and then we're going to toss this on fast forward. with our coloring done, it's time to go in and start labeling things. And I've got this really fun quill that I picked up. So we're going to be inking in our labels. So to start with, I'm just labeling this page as the elements. Now, fair warning, I'm not very good at this yet. I'm just kind of learning about using fancy ink nibs, but I love the vintage vibe of using a feathered quill and pen nib. It's fun and it goes with the vibe of the Grimoire. So I'm just going to be playing this, and so please excuse my terrible handwriting. Now, the ink that I'm using for this is by Jane Davenport, and it's one of her gradient inks from the Roman God set. This is Plato, which is a lovely black, and it's going to have a few similar properties to Distress. As it dries, it's going to be a little bit splotchy. None of the color is going to be exactly like a true black. It's going to definitely have a bit of a distressed look. So I thought that would fit right in with these pages. I'm hoping as time goes on, I will get a bit better with my hand lettering. I am taking a few online courses trying to learn a bit more about calligraphy because I think it's really cool and definitely goes with all things vintage. So here we go. That's earth. We got fire. Now let's try wind. So just trying to go slow and keep this as even as possible. But if it's a little bit off to the side or crooked, well, you know what? It's just going to add to the handmade feel of this. All right, there we go with water. That's pretty good. And now I'm going to label the other side of the page. For this side, it's going to be seasons. And my plan is to draw a tree that kind of has leaves in all of the different stages of seasons. And I'm just going to roughly freehand that. And we'll be pulling in more Distress Mica spray stains and some Distress inks. We're going to be using Decayed. And for the inks, I've got a combination of Vintage Photo, and I think I'll be pulling in some Aged Mahogany. Now it's time to add a few finishing touches on that first page that I started. So I'm pulling in a Decofoil gold leaf pen, and I wanted to do some little sunbeam, little radiant lines coming out from the 4 elements. So I'm using a tape roll as a guide while I start drawing some lines. Now I'm hoping that the gold leaf pen is going to really shine after it dries. So just thought it'd be fun to add another metallic element, and we'll see how this does, because I'm really trying to keep with this theme of illumination. And if this works, I'll definitely be adding more golden accents to other parts of this book. So just freehanding this, drawing some lines out, doing some different lengths, some that are completely long, some that are kind of doing a little bit of a dotted line. And we're just going to have to see how it goes. That is some of the fun of art journaling. You don't really know what you're going to do until you're doing it, and I like the adventure of it. Now I'm just going to freehand in a few more lines, and that looks pretty good. Okay, just taking a quick look at these panels that we've finished. We've got our seasonal page, and we've got our 4 elements. Now we're moving on to our first creature. And the first creature that I want to tackle is the mermaid. That is going to be fun. But before we even get into the drawing aspect, I need to go in and add some water. So of course, I need to be pulling in some Mermaid Lagoon with Distress Spray Stain. So we're just going to give this page a bit of a wash, a bit of a spritz, and we'll have to let it dry before we dive into the next drawing. Ooh, already I'm starting to get ocean vibes. This is very exciting and definitely one of my favorite mythical creatures that I absolutely had to include in the book. So we're just going to move the color around and try to get some good coverage, making sure that that beautiful vintage photo color is still shining through. And then we'll get to dive into the art. All right, I'm just going to finish coloring this in just a little bit, and then we'll let it dry, and we'll be back to do some more art. To start this page, I'm just going to do a quick sketch of where I'd like my mermaid to be. So I'm kind of thinking we're just going to do some big fins, just like that. And then we'll have the body coming over this way. I'm just trying to do this as loosely as I can. I don't really have much of a plan at this moment. And anyways, these pencil lines are going to get covered up pretty fast because I'm going to be using distress paints today. So, got that. And let's see here. Kind of want her facing this way. There we go. Yeah, I'm not going to have much of a plan. That's okay. So, it's been very rough. Let's just dive in and start painting. This is going to make a whole lot more sense once I've got paint on the page. Here is our completed mermaid. I am so happy with the way this came out. I am loving the colors and all the textures that we added. Now we're going to be adding some creature info facts. I play D&D, so I have definitely patterned this after the Dungeons & Dragons monster manual that tells you some interesting things about various mystical creatures. So in this case, we are looking at merfolk, aka mermaids, or to be specific, homo poisson. So what I'm writing in here are some of the basic character stats that you might see in a D&D manual, and I'd like to think that these stats would easily transfer over to a grimoire or a bestiary. So your average mermaid is starting with a health of approximately 11, which is determined when you roll a set of d8s and then add 2 to whatever the score is. Armor class is 11. Your speed of the average mermaid is 10 feet within one turn or swimming 40 feet in a turn. Skills has perception, the ability to notice things with a bonus of +2. Senses include a passive sense of perception, which gives you a bonus of 12. Languages include Aquarian and Common Tongue. So these are just some of the basic mermaid facts. And of course, weapons include the spear, melee weapons, or ranged weapons. Given a +2 bonus when you roll a d6. So just some fun stats just to give the page a little bit more to it. Now I wanted to add some texture to our spread. We've got some transparent texture paste and our bubble stencil. The bubble stencil is THS138. Thought this would be lots of fun to add just to give more of an underwater vibe. So don't be alarmed, this does go on pretty opaque, but when it dries, these bubbles will be beautiful and transparent and textured. You'll even be able to feel the slight rise of the bubbles after these have dried. So I'll be adding bubbles, of course, to both sides, and I'm being pretty haphazard with the palette knife. No particular pattern, I just want to get texture on here and there. So no real plan, just playing with bubbles. So let's finish that up. And this is going to take approximately 15 to 20 minutes to dry. Of course, always based on your climate zone. Let's check out the results of the transparent texture paste through the bubble stencil. And just to recap, that stencil was THS138. So let's take a closer look. As we tilt this, we can see those bubbles. I love how that adds texture and contrast to our spread. Thank you so much for joining me here today at the Crafty Corner as we've continued work on the Grimoire book. So here we have the Grimoire. We completed this in our last video, and then we started working on doing some collage. We've been adding some fun things to the pages, and we started working on the details of the spreads themselves. On the first set that we worked on, we have a seasons page, and we have the 4 elements. We embellished with distress inks, oxides, mica spray stains, deco art, foil pen, and a little bit of calligraphy ink. Then we went in for a second page today to complete a spread for the mythical creature, the mermaid. And we got to play with texture paste, we used distress paints, and a bit of freehand painting. Now, these stats on the side, taken right from the D&D Monster Manual. And then we hand wrote these stats on the side for the mythical creature. I hope that you've enjoyed today's process while creating these spreads and having some mixed media fun. Until next time, happy crafting!